Welcome to Student Career Studios chat series. My name is Kalicia, and today we have a very distinguished guest, Donald, who is a business development lead at Amazon. Super excited to chat with him today because there's so many students and professionals really interested in Amazon. So I thought it would be a great idea for him to come share his career journey, and you all are able to ask any questions that you have. So for those that have been with us before, welcome back. For those who are joining for the first time, welcome. Student Career Studios, a nonprofit organization trying to bridge the gap between awesome opportunities and the amazing students and provide access and exposure to various scholarship, leadership, and internship opportunities. We started this career chat series so professionals can share their journey as well as students and just kind of build community, ask questions, and really get to know other professionals and industries and companies that you're interested in. So for those that have submitted questions in advance, thank you so much for those. And throughout the time, feel free to drop your questions in the chat or come off mute and turn your camera on to engage with Donald at any time. So thank you so much for joining us. And with that, I will kick it over to Donald.
Awesome, Kalicia. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here, share some of my career journey, and talk specifically about Amazon. I think it's been an amazing opportunity for me and continues to be for a lot of people. So maybe just some brief background about myself. Grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, PG County, Sea Pleasant, Maryland to be specific. And early on, I knew I wanted to be an engineer. I started in electrical engineering, but ultimately weaved my way into mechanical engineering, where I went to North Carolina A&T. And at the time, my mindset wasn't necessarily fulfillment or enjoyment. It was, where can I go to make the most money? So I'll be 100% real. It was money first. And at the time I graduated in 2008, ExxonMobil was one of the highest paying oil and gas companies, or companies in general, for anyone coming out of college. So I set my sight on the oil and gas industry and spent my time, 8 years, the first 8 years of my career. I thought I was going to be an oil and gas executive. And over time, I started to learn that money wasn't everything, but where I got a lot of enjoyment was working with customers, innovating, sales, business development. Those things were exciting. And I set my eyes on both entrepreneurship and Amazon. And Amazon attracted me because here there was a company innovating at a pace that I don't think we've really seen in history, and doing it at a really high level. So if I can learn from them, then I can do it anywhere. So I joined Amazon in the winter of 2017. I joined what's called Amazon Business. It's a marketplace. Pretty much everything you love about Amazon as a consumer, we do the exact same things for businesses, enabling them to purchase things. And with my current role, my business development role at Amazon, I'm in charge of looking around corners, working with our customers to identify what new ways they want to use Amazon, or how do they want to use Amazon today and they're not able to, and how can I work across our internal teams to make that happen? Product, technical, marketing, sales, etc. So really awesome job, really awesome opportunity, and it's been a great company to work for.
Yeah, that does sound really, really interesting. And you touched on a few points from some questions that I received in advance that I want to bring up really quick. So one of them is, do you think it's a waste of time studying engineering and then end up in a non-technical role? So can you talk about like the skill set that you learned from engineering and how that helps you in the business world?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, two ways. And I always say I'm not using my strength of materials class in my current role, but I am using the concepts. So in the same way that you go to solve an engineering problem, you can replicate and take that same thought process and use that for something else as well. So it's less about using the exact calculations or formulas that you're going to use to calculate hoop stress or shear stress and all of those super technical terms that I used to know like the back of my hand. But that same thought process and mental model applies to solving different problems. But it may be a consumer problem, it may be a psychology problem. So I don't think it's a waste of time. I think the other benefit, to be blatantly honest, is I think it values you and your experience as an engineer. And then you also set yourself up on a different trajectory from a pay perspective too, because now you have a natural floor and limitation to sort of how else you could be using your skills somewhere else. So even though I don't I don't have an engineering, leverage an engineering skill set at Amazon today. I say that I'm paid like an engineer without that. So I'd much rather have that than the other way around.
Yeah, good point. And then the next question is, what are some key skills you learned in oil and gas that you were able to bring over to the tech industry?
I didn't honestly out of the gate. I didn't think I would have a ton to add. I'll be 100% honest. One of the biggest things that I feared was here I am. I've set up my entire career really to be oil and gas specific. Everything was oil and gas. It was 8 years oil and gas. And when I started to look at some of the job functions and the descriptions, I honestly got intimidated because I thought aren't titles or roles that I'm familiar with or skill sets that I'm familiar with. But what I was able to do is sort of match and figure out, well, we may call it something here at Exxon, but at Amazon, it's effectively the exact same job. They just call it something else. So I think a couple things that go a long way in the tech industry that I really sort of learned and honed in the oil and gas space. The first one is working with people with an extremely high IQ and learning how to effectively communicate, problem solve, and really have an executive presence that will serve you well wherever you go. So I was able to hit the ground running at Amazon and really earn the trust of customers and our internal parties. I think the second thing that you really learn is operational excellence is at the height. It's the epitome of the oil and gas industry. The margin of error is so slim. So the expectation that you will deliver results and with almost zero mistake is a really high bar to set. There's a much more leniency in the tech industry, and failing fast is something that's common. So you sort of have to unlearn that piece, but you sort of become a perfectionist. So having that really high level and high standard, insisting on the highest standards in everything that I do has been a direct carryover. I say the last thing too that I'll mention is having that engineering skill set and working in a space like the oil and gas space has enabled me to be able to sort of pick up and dive deep on a lot of things that I'm required to do at Amazon that had I not had that experience, I don't think I would have had the same level of confidence that I do now.
That's awesome. And I hear a lot of people talk about imposter syndrome coming into the tech industry, especially at the big tech companies. So did you experience that at all? What's been your experience with imposter syndrome?
I'll be honest, it probably the opposite. I felt like I had more uh, personal imposter syndrome uh, things happen to me when I was at Exxon. To be honest, I think the tech space enables you to be more, I would say more relaxed. So this sweater, this is probably the most dressed up I've been in months, largely because I'm sort of just tired of wearing pajamas and sweatpants. But uh, at tech companies, you're working with engineers, you're working with PMs. Oftentimes I'll have a hat and a hoodie on, and it's cool because our VP has a hat on too. So I think that piece alone sort of lowers sort of the barrier. So I honestly, I feel right at home. So I really haven't had a lot of those experiences since I've joined.
Well, that's awesome that you haven't had those experiences. So you touched on like the casual wear. So can we let's move into the culture at Amazon when you were back in the office. I'm sure it was completely different from oil and gas, especially coming from Exxon. So can you talk a little bit more about the culture at Amazon? What's like, day to day? I hear about the free food and snacks and things like that. So what was it like just being in the office?
A lot of dogs. That's the first thing. That's the first thing I picked up
Dogs?
on. Dog animals, dogs.
So bring your dogs to work.
So bringing your dog to work is a very normal thing, and it took me a while, but that's literally the first thing that you pick up on is it almost feels like more dogs than people in the office. I forget they used to keep track of these types of things, but there's a stat in like the dog to person ratio, but a lot of dogs. So that's the first thing. I mean, dogs in meetings, dogs at desks, dogs roaming the halls. Just imagine being in college, but dogs could be there. That's sort of what the experience feels like. So, some people have open-toed shoes, some people in flip-flops, some people in hoodies, some people get dolled and dressed up to go to meetings, and then a lot of dogs walking around. So it's a pretty cool sort of forward-thinking experience. And then you'll come around the hall, and then someone will be playing ping pong in the back. And then you'll cross another hall, and then someone will be having happy hour or a pizza party with a Bluetooth speaker going off. And then you'll walk outside to go to your lunch break across the street. There's a food truck, but you might pass some people lounging out on some bean bags, reading a book on the campus. So that college campus atmosphere is really there. I mean, it's sort of, it's not as sort of reached the height of what you hear a lot about Google, but in the same vein, they want you to feel at home. They want you to feel comfortable. So just things that you never really would imagine seeing, like dogs, like people playing ping pong, and encouraged to play ping pong, and people drinking in a happy hour in an environment in the office. Like that would never fly in a lot of spaces, but that was commonplace to make people comfortable.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that can make people comfortable and want to come to work and be happy at work. So that's pretty awesome. So I know you do some university recruiting at your alma mater. So can you talk more about the university recruiting, some common mistakes that you see students make on their resume or their interview process, what the interview process is like, things like that?
Without a doubt. So I led a recruitment team at Amazon. Well, I led one at Exxon, and I led one at Amazon for a while before transitioning that off to someone else. And I see a lot of mistakes, but I see a lot of opportunity. I think across the board, people and students have everything that they need to get in the door at Amazon. I think the challenge is often, how do I communicate? How do I know what they're looking for? Like, I think I'm good. I think I have the experience, but like, what exactly are they looking for? And there's really no magic science behind any of it. It's really broadly communicated, but I think what often happens is people have a sort of a set standard, or career services will put out a template of a resume, and that's the template that they follow. Or they know someone who's given them a resume template, and that's the one that they use. Or they try to get fancy, and they make they put it in Photoshop. So they've got pictures, or they've got 3-page resumes. And what Amazon looks for, because writing is such an important responsibility there, they're really looking for you to clearly and crisply communicate what it is that you were responsible for, what you achieved, and what difference you made. But do it in a way that is quantifiable. So I'll read a lot of resumes that read responsible for overseeing plant operations in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And then my first question that I'll ask to a student that I'm talking to is, how big was the plant? What was the output of the plant? How much throughput did the plant have in dollar amount or in volume? On the projects that you worked on, you said you oversaw an assembly line. How many widgets did you make? Did you improve that performance? Was it more efficient when you left? Did you save the company money? And they'll start rattling off all of these things. And then I'll hold up their resume and say, why isn't any of that in your resume? Well, I didn't think the company wanted to see that. No, that's what you need to put in there, because companies like Amazon are getting hundreds of thousands of resumes per day. So you need to very explicitly say, oversaw a $295 million X at our XYZ refinery that outputs an average volume of X. And through the project that I led, we were able to save or cut down time by 10%, saving the company an annual approximate value of $350 million. That says a lot more than all you did was oversee a plant. So I encourage people to do that, but do it for every single bullet. And it's exhausting and it's a lot of work. But when you look back, you'll have a very short 1-page resume, because that's all you need. and it'll say everything that you did. And then when they read that, it's a very easy, okay, great, this person is awesome. Let's just bring them in to talk to them, and not try to figure out what they did and how they did it and decipher if they'll be a good fit. You want to take that burden off of the resume reviewer, and give them everything that they need to know.
Say they have a great resume, they've been selected for an interview. How should they best prepare? Just, Googling behavioral based STAR questions, or do you have any other advice?
I do, yeah. Behavior-based STAR questions is definitely a good place to start. I'd say getting comfortable with that is really sort of 1A. I think the second thing is really understanding the culture of the company. And let's talk specifically Amazon. They live by 14 leadership principles. So being familiar with those leadership principles, what are they? Why are they? Why do they exist? In understanding how those leadership principles apply to what you worked on and what the job that you're applying for is looking for. So you need to be able to walk through examples on your resume. I often tell people 8 to 10 examples of your resume, and think about the leadership principles as they align to your resume experience. So as one might be invent and simplify as a leadership principle. You need to think about something in your resume that says, hey, there's a time where I had to create something from scratch that nobody was doing before, and it had an outsized impact. You need to be able to walk through that in a STAR method. So really not rocket science, but I always say 8 to 10 examples, think about the leadership principles, and make sure you can complete a full STAR for each of your resume bullet points.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I always preach to students like to quantify their results. I mean, I know it's really hard, but I hear people say it all the time, but still a lot of people don't do it. So if you definitely want to stand out, please quantify your results in your resume. Shoot me a note, I'll help you. But that's so important. So Donald, I know that you are a serial entrepreneur. I think that's how I met you, through you speaking about one of the apps that you created way back a few years ago. So how do you manage a full-time job in entrepreneurship and just staying motivated?
And being a family man as well. I've got a wife and a couple of kids. I think for me, you only get one life, and I never want to spend any waking moment not doing something that I don't absolutely love doing. And I think the way that sort of brings itself to light out in my entrepreneurial endeavors is I'll do a ton of experiments to figure out, like, hey, what it is that I want to do. And if I'm not happy with a current role or a current job, I'll try to go out and create my own. So for me, passion is important. Like living life to the fullest is important. So if I ever found myself, I never want to have a complaint about something, but not also have the ability to put the actions into motion to change it. So if I'm going to complain about it, then I need to have a solution and I need to be working toward it. So I try to just use that sort of mindset and compartmentalize and go as hard as I can when I'm working on the day job. And then when that's over and I've got time with the kids and that's done, I'll come back and, all right, now what I need to do for Boxed Up in order to be successful. So not to say that it's not tiring. I make a ton of sacrifices. I never really go out anymore. I'm pretty much a loser. And that's a far cry from like where I was. If you talk to me 15 years ago in college, I was doing a whole lot more than I am now, but that's not the case anymore.
You're not a loser, Donald. You're not a loser. You just have
I don't do anything, man. I literally don't do anything ever, even before COVID.
Speaking of COVID, how has COVID impacted you at work?
We've been home since February of 2020. And I think that's sort of the other big thing about the tech industry. It's hard pressed for leaders in the tech company to sort of mandate that everyone be in the office when the products that we sell and things that we do are so remote natural. So a lot of people have been home, haven't been back. I honestly don't know when we'll be back. I'd be shocked if we went back in 2021, to be honest. I'm hoping and praying that we get back, but I'm just not sure. So it's been from a work culture standpoint, it's actually been pretty seamless. We kind of all set up. There was already a fair amount of workplace flexibility. So we all just stayed home, and then they gave us a stipend. So it's been difficult. I think, like a lot of other people, my day sort of bleeds one into the other. It feels like one long day of work. Like I wake up and the computer's there, and I go to sleep, it feels like the computer's there. So I think having some defined criteria, like when I work, when I turn off, has been important. But from that standpoint, it's been pretty smooth.
Yeah, I definitely hear that a lot. I've had to create some boundaries for myself, like, okay, at this time, no more computer, and I'm at home now. So yeah, it's definitely difficult. Um, Before we wrap up, any last pieces of advice for anyone trying to break into tech or Amazon that you want to share?
By far the biggest one is whenever I talk to people trying to break in, they feel like they need to code or they feel like they need their MBA. And you don't need either one of those. I code now. I didn't code when I walked in the door. And I thought I really wanted my MBA and I thought I needed an MBA. And then I started putting myself out there and I found that I was getting interviews without it. So you don't need it. I do think you need to be able to show that you can solve business problems. If let's say if you're like deep in engineering, I do think you need to exhibit some of the skill sets required. But you don't need an MBA to start, and you don't need to teach yourself how to code. All those things help now. You got an MBA, you can code, you can get you some AWS certs. All those things help, or Azure certs. All those things help, but it's not a requirement. So don't feel like you need to check off those boxes. Just put yourself out there. Make sure, like Felicia said, make sure you shoot her your resume and get some help if you need to. But make sure your resume is tight, and that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much for saying that because I also hear that as well. Like you need to code and you need an MBA. So thank you for sharing your perspective and providing that insight for sure. Um, Thank you so much for your time, Donald. I know it's Thursday, almost the weekend. So hope you have a great weekend. Thank you again for sharing your career journey and definitely drop some gems tonight. Thank you everybody else on the call that joined us this evening. Go follow Student Career Studio, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And if you all have any questions, feel free to reach out.